I was washing my plate at Mama Ade's food shop when something strange caught my eye. It wasn't a chicken bone or a piece of meat. It was a small, pale finger, floating in the soapy water. My heart started beating fast, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I dropped the finger and stepped back, feeling scared and confused. Kola, my friend, was with me. He saw it too, and his eyes went wide with shock. "What is that?" he whispered, grabbing my arm. I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that something was very wrong. We left the shop quickly, not wanting anyone to notice. But deep down, I knew we had to find out the truth. Mama Ade's food was loved by everyone in our village. Her shop was always full of customers, all eager to taste her delicious meals. Her pounded yam was soft, and her jollof rice was always perfectly cooked. People said her food had a special taste, something magical that made them want to come back for more. Even though her shop was small, people lined up outside every day, waiting for their turn to eat. Some customers would even wash their own plates after eating, which was strange. No one ever complained, though. Everyone was happy except now I wasn't. After seeing that finger, I couldn't stop thinking about what might be hidden in her food. Kola and I couldn't stop talking about what we saw. We knew something was wrong, but we didn't know what to do. "Maybe it was a mistake," Kola said, trying to calm me down. "Maybe it was just an old trick, something to scare people." But I wasn't convinced. My stomach churned every time I thought about that finger. I told Kola we had to do something. We couldn't just forget about it. What if more people were in danger? Kola hesitated, but eventually he agreed. We decided to watch Mama Ade's shop carefully and see if we could find out what was really going on. The next day, Kola and I didn't go inside Mama Ade's shop. Instead, we stood far away, hiding behind a tree, and watched. Customers came and went like usual. People were laughing, talking, and enjoying their food. Everything seemed normal, but my mind was racing. What if there was more to her food than we knew? We stayed there for hours, but nothing strange happened. Mama Ade served her customers, and they left with full stomachs and smiles. I started to wonder if maybe I was wrong. Maybe the finger had just been a horrible mistake. But then, something happened that made my heart skip a beat. After her last customer left, Mama Ade came out of her shop carrying a large metal pot. She didn't go back inside to clean it. Instead, she walked toward the bushes behind the shop. Kola and I followed her, staying far enough so she wouldn't see us. We were both nervous, but we couldn't stop ourselves. Mama Ade stopped at a small clearing, where there was a shallow pit covered with palm leaves. She knelt down, removed the leaves, and poured the contents of the pot into the pit. I saw bones and bits of meat fall out. My blood turned cold when I saw human bones mixed with the remains. This was no mistake. The pit was full of bones, skulls, arms, legs, all mixed together like trash. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My legs felt weak, and my stomach was turning. Kola grabbed my arm and whispered, "We have to get out of here." But I was frozen, staring at the horrible sight in front of us. After pouring the pot's contents into the pit, Mama Ade calmly covered it again and walked back to her shop. She acted like nothing had happened, like this was normal for her. I didn't know what to do. We had just uncovered something terrible, but who would believe us? Kola and I ran back to the village, our hearts pounding. We had to tell someone about what we saw, but we didn't know where to start. We decided to go to the elders, the oldest and wisest people in the village. They would know what to do. But when we got there and told them the story, they didn't believe us. The elders said we were making up stories, that it was impossible for Mama Ade to be doing such a thing. "She has been feeding this village for years," one elder said. "Why would she do something so evil?" But we knew what we saw, and we couldn't just let it go. We had to find a way to prove it. Kola and I decided to gather more proof. We couldn't convince anyone without evidence. So we went back to the bushes near Mama Ade's shop the next day, hoping to see something that would help us. We hid behind the same tree and watched carefully. This time, we brought a small camera that Kola had borrowed from his uncle. We were going to take pictures of the pit and the bones. We waited for hours, but Mama Ade didn't come out with her pot this time. Instead, something even more strange happened inside her shop. As we watched from afar, we noticed something strange about the customers. After eating, some of them didn't just leave right away. They stood up slowly like they were in a daze, and walked to the washing area to clean their plates. It wasn't normal. They moved as if they weren't in control of their own bodies. Kola whispered, "What's wrong with them?" I didn't know. It was like they were hypnotized or under some kind of spell. After washing their plates, they left the shop quietly, without saying a word. I knew something was terribly wrong and we needed more answers. Kola and I decided we had to get closer to the washing area. We waited until it was quiet, and then we sneaked up to the back of the shop. We peeked inside the washing bucket, where the customers had been cleaning their plates. At first, we didn't see anything strange. It was just water and soap. But then, as we looked closer, we saw tiny pieces of something floating in the water. It wasn't food. It was small white bones. My heart started racing again. These weren't animal bones. They were too small. Kola gasped, and we quickly backed away. We knew now for sure that Mama Ade was hiding something terrible. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bones in the washing bucket and the pit full of human remains. My mind kept going back to Mama Ade's food, the way it tasted, and how everyone loved it so much. How many times had I eaten there? How many people had unknowingly eaten something so terrible? Kola felt the same way. We couldn't stop thinking about what we saw, but we also knew that if we told more people without solid proof, no one would believe us. We had to be careful, but we also had to act fast. Something bad was happening, and it wasn't just a finger or a few bones. It was something much bigger. The next morning, Kola and I met early to talk about what to do next. We knew we couldn't keep this secret for long. We had to find a way to expose Mama Ade without getting into trouble ourselves. We need real proof, I said. Something we can show the village so they'll believe us. Kola agreed. We decided to sneak back to the bushes that night, under the cover of darkness, and take pictures of the pit. If we could capture what we had seen, no one could deny the truth. But we were both scared. What if Mama Ade caught us? What if her magic was even stronger than we thought? That night, Kola and I sneaked out of our houses and made our way back to the bushes near Mama Ade's shop. It was quiet, and the air felt heavy. My heart pounded in my chest as we crouched behind the same tree, waiting for her to come out. We had the camera ready, hoping to get the pictures we needed. Hours passed, and nothing happened. The shop was dark and no one came out. I started to wonder if maybe we were wasting our time. But just as we were about to leave, we saw a flicker of light from the back of the shop. Mama Ade stepped out, carrying her large pot again. This time we were ready. We stayed as quiet as possible as we watched Mama Ade make her way to the pit. She uncovered it like before, revealing the bones and remains inside. My hands were shaking, but Kola snapped the pictures quickly, capturing everything. We got the proof we needed. I felt a mix of fear and relief, knowing we were finally going to expose her. Mama Ade dumped the contents of the pot into the pit, just like the last time. Then she covered it and started walking back to her shop. We stayed hidden, holding our breaths until she was gone. Once we were sure it was safe, we ran back home, clutching the camera like it was the most important thing in the world. We knew we had to show the elders as soon as possible. The next morning, Kola and I rushed to the village elders. We were nervous, but we knew we had to show them the pictures. This was our chance to finally prove what we had seen. When we arrived, we asked for an emergency meeting. The elders looked at us with concern, wondering what was so urgent. We handed them the camera and explained everything again. First, they looked skeptical just like before. But as they scrolled through the pictures, their faces changed. The room grew quiet, and some of the elders gasped. There in the photos were the bones and the pit, clear evidence of Mama Ade's dark secret. The elders whispered among themselves, clearly shocked by what they had seen. One of the oldest, Elder Ojo, stood up and said, "This is serious. We must act quickly before more people are harmed." The others nodded in agreement. They couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. Mama Ade had to be stopped. They decided to alert the police and gather more villagers to witness what was hidden in the bushes. The plan was to go to Mama Ade's shop the next day, confront her, and dig up the pit for everyone to see. As Kola and I left the meeting, we felt both relieved and anxious. The truth was finally going to come out, but we didn't know how Mama Ade would react. The next morning, word spread quickly throughout the village. People were talking in hushed voices, wondering why the elders had called for an urgent meeting. By midday, a large crowd had gathered outside Mama Ade's shop. Everyone was curious, but no one suspected the terrible truth that was about to be revealed. The police arrived with the elders, and Kola and I stood at the back of the crowd, feeling nervous. We had never been part of something so serious before. The elders stepped forward and knocked on Mama Ade's door. The village held its breath as they waited for her to come out. Mama Ade opened the door with a calm smile, like she always did when serving her customers. "Elders, what brings you here?" she asked, her voice sweet and innocent. The crowd murmured, confused as to why the police were there. Elder Ojo stepped forward, holding the camera in his hand. "Mama Ade," he said, his voice stern, "we have discovered something terrible. We know what you've been hiding." Mama Ade's smile faded for the first time. She glanced at the camera and then at the police. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice sharp now, but the elders didn't back down. They told her they were going to search the bushes behind her shop. The elders, police, and a few brave villagers followed Mama Ade as they walked toward the bushes behind her shop. The crowd, including Kola and me, stayed a bit behind, watching from a distance. My heart raced as we neared the spot where we had seen the pit. Mama Ade remained silent, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. When they reached the clearing, Elder Ojo pointed to the ground. "Dig here," he instructed the police. Mama Ade's face tightened, but she said nothing. The police began to dig. The crowd grew quieter, everyone holding their breath as they waited to see what would be uncovered. After digging for just a few minutes, the police uncovered the first bones. There was a collective gasp from the crowd. Skulls, ribs, and limbs, human bones, lay buried in the shallow pit. Some people screamed, others stepped back in horror. I felt my stomach churn as I saw the bones we had already seen, now exposed for all to witness. Mama Ade finally spoke, her voice shaking. "I don't know how that got there," she shouted, her calm demeanor now gone. But no one believed her. The evidence was too clear. The elders ordered the police to arrest her. As they put her in handcuffs, Mama Ade struggled, her face twisted in anger and fear. The truth was out, and the village would never be the same again. After Mama Ade was taken away by the police, the village was left in a state of shock. People gathered in small groups, whispering about the horrifying discovery. Many couldn't believe that someone they had trusted for years had been capable of such evil. Families who had regularly eaten at her shop were the most shaken. Some villagers cried, while others stood in stunned silence. Kola and I stayed at the back of the crowd, still processing what had just happened. We had known the truth, but seeing everyone's reactions made it all feel more real. The elders began discussing how to perform rituals to cleanse the village of the evil that had taken place. But deep inside, I wondered if things would ever go back to normal. Over the next few days, the village was a different place. People no longer laughed as they did before, and the air felt heavier, like a dark cloud had settled over everything. The police continued their investigation, and more bones were discovered in different parts of the bush. It seemed Mama Ade had been hiding her terrible secret for a long time. The shop where Mama Ade used to serve her food was abandoned, left untouched. No one dared go near it. The village felt haunted by what had been uncovered, and the once beloved food cellar was now spoken of only in fearful whispers. Kola and I tried to go back to our normal lives, but we couldn't shake the images of the bones from our minds. As days passed, strange things began happening in the village. People claimed to hear whispers at night, especially near Mama Ade's abandoned shop. Some said it was the spirits of those who had been eaten, angry and restless. Others thought it was just fear making people imagine things, But the atmosphere had definitely changed. One night, Kola and I sat by the fire, talking quietly. "Do you think those whispers are real?" "Yes." Kola shrugged, but his face showed worry. "I don't know, but I keep thinking about the pit. Those bones. Maybe they're not resting." We both knew the village needed something more than an arrest. It needed a way to deal with the spirits, if they were truly there. The elders finally decided that the village needed a spiritual cleansing. They called on the oldest and wisest herbalist from a nearby town. His name was Baba Leke, and he was known for his powerful rituals. When Baba Leke arrived, he wore a long robe made of animal skins and carried a staff decorated with beads and feathers. Baba Leke prepared a ritual to cleanse the land and put the spirits to rest. He told the villagers to gather around the pit where the bones had been found. Everyone came, hoping the ritual would rid the village of the dark energy that had settled over it. Kola and I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching closely as Baba Leke began chanting in a deep, rhythmic voice, calling out to the spirits. As Baba Leke chanted, the villagers watched with a mix of fear and hope. The air felt charged with energy, and a strange wind began to blow, rustling the leaves around us. Baba Leke moved around the pit, sprinkling herbs and water while waving his staff in the air. The crowd fell silent, and I could hear only his voice and the rustle of the trees. "Spirits of the lost, we call upon you," he intoned. "Restless souls, return to peace. You have suffered. Now find your way home." Kola squeezed my hand tightly as we listened. The atmosphere felt heavy, almost as if the very earth was listening to the words of the old man. Suddenly, as Baba Leke continued his chant, I felt a chill run down my spine. The wind picked up, and I saw a flicker of movement near the pit. It was as if shadows were dancing around, swirling in the air. I blinked, and for a moment I thought I saw faces. Faces of the people who had gone missing from our village. Kola noticed my expression and asked, "What's wrong?" I shook my head, unable to explain what I was seeing. It was both beautiful and terrifying. The shadows seemed to sway with the rhythm of Baba Leke's chant, as if they were responding to his words. I felt an urge to step closer, but fear held me back. What was happening? Were the spirits really here? As the ritual continued, I could hear soft whispers carried by the wind, words I couldn't quite understand. Baba Leke raised his voice, asking the spirits to reveal themselves. "Speak if you are here. We honor you." At that moment, the wind grew stronger, swirling around the pit. I felt as though the very air was alive. And then, out of the shadows, a clear voice broke through the whispers. It was faint but distinct. "Help us. Help us find peace," the villagers gasped, some covering their mouths in shock. I could hardly breathe, realizing that the spirits were indeed trying to communicate. Kola and I exchanged worried glances, our hearts racing. What did they want from us? Baba Leke, undeterred by the voices, continued his chanting. "You are not forgotten. Your pain is heard. We will find a way to honor your memory." The crowd listened in awe, the fear slowly turning into respect for the spirits. I felt a strange mix of sadness and urgency, knowing these souls had been wronged. After the chanting, Baba Leke instructed the villagers to bring offerings, flowers, food, and personal items that could honor the lost. "These will help guide the spirits to rest," he explained. Kola and I felt the need to contribute, wanting to show that we cared about the people who had suffered. Together, we gathered flowers and food from our homes to place at the pit. The next day, the village gathered again at the pit. Baba Leke led us in placing our offerings around the area. Flowers bloomed in bright colors, and the scent of the food filled the air. As we laid down each item, I felt a sense of connection to those who had been lost. We were honoring them, giving them a chance to find peace. After the offerings were placed, Baba Leke led us in a moment of silence. The wind seemed to calm as we stood together, remembering those who had vanished. I closed my eyes and imagined them finding their way home, finally free from the pain that Mama Ade had caused. As the days went on, the whispers in the village faded. Baba Leke's ritual seemed to have worked. People began to smile again, and life slowly returned to normal. But the memory of what had happened remained. The village had learned to be more cautious and to look out for one another. Kola and I felt relieved but also changed by the experience. We had faced something terrifying, but we had also found strength in the truth. The village became closer, with people sharing stories and memories of those who had been lost. It was a new beginning, one filled with hope and resilience. Months passed, and life in the village started to feel normal again. However, the spot where Mama Ade's shop stood remained empty. It was a reminder of the dark days, and no one dared to rebuild there. But one morning, a surprising sight greeted us. Workers were clearing the area, preparing to open a new food shop. Kola and I watched from a distance, feeling a mix of emotions. The idea of a new shop brought hope, but it also reminded us of the past. "Do you think they know what happened?" Kola asked. "I hope they do," I replied. "We can't let history repeat itself." We decided to keep an eye on the new shop just to be safe. When the new food seller arrived, she was quite different from Mama Ade. Her name was Aisha, and she was friendly and warm. She greeted everyone with a big smile and told us she wanted to bring fresh, healthy food to the village. Many people were excited to try her dishes, but Kola and I remained cautious. Aisha quickly won over the villagers with her delicious meals. She made sure to use only local ingredients and welcomed feedback from everyone. Slowly, the fear from the past began to fade, but Kola and I still kept our eyes open. We didn't want to rush into trusting someone again. One evening, as Kola and I walked past Aisha's shop, we noticed something strange. A few villagers were standing outside, looking worried. "What's going on?" I asked. They told us that some customers had complained about feeling sick after eating Aisha's food. Kola and I exchanged glances, our hearts sinking. Had we made a mistake by trusting Aisha? We decided to stay close and watch, hoping it was just a coincidence. But deep down, I felt a sense of dread creeping back in. Were we about to witness another dark secret? Kola and I began to pay closer attention to Aisha's shop. We would sit nearby, watching the customers come and go. Most people still seemed happy, but we couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. We noticed that a few customers were looking pale, and some didn't return after their first visit. One night, we saw Aisha tossing food scraps into the back of her shop. Curious, we crept closer to see what she was doing. When we peeked around the corner, my heart sank. She was throwing away a large bag filled with what looked like strange, unidentifiable meat. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. Could it be happening all over again? Kola and I exchanged horrified glances as we watched Aisha. The bag was filled with something that looked wrong. Too dark, too strange to be normal meat. We felt a chill run down our spines, reminding us of the pit behind Mama Ade's shop. "We have to find out what's going on," I whispered to Kola. "If she's hiding something, we need to stop her before it's too late." We decided to follow Aisha after she closed the shop for the night. With our hearts pounding, we quietly trailed her as she walked through the village. She didn't seem to notice us, her mind focused on whatever business she had. Kola and I stayed hidden in the shadows, hoping to gather more information about this new seller who might not be what she appeared. Aisha led us to a secluded part of the village, far from the main road. She stopped in front of an old, abandoned building that had been empty for years. My stomach twisted as I realized that this was not just any meeting place. It was the same one where Mama Ade used to go to meet her shady associates. Kola and I crouched behind a nearby tree, holding our breaths. Aisha knocked on the door, and it opened almost immediately. Two shadowy figures appeared, and they exchanged whispers with her. I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but I could see the worry on Aisha's face. The figures handed her a large sack, and she quickly took it inside. "We have to get a closer look," Kola said, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling the urgency of the moment. We carefully approached the building, making sure to stay out of sight. Once we reached a window, we peered inside to see what was happening. What we saw made my blood run cold. Aisha was opening the sack, revealing what looked like pieces of meat wrapped in plastic. The two figures were talking to her in low voices, their faces hidden in the shadows. They gestured towards a table filled with other supplies that looked suspicious. I felt a mix of fear and determination. We couldn't let this continue. Kola and I knew we needed to gather evidence again, just like we did with Mama Ade. But this time it felt even riskier. What if she sees us? I whispered. Kola replied, we have to be careful. We need proof before we go to the elders. We agreed to wait until Aisha and the figures left the building before sneaking inside to investigate. After what felt like hours, the figures finally left, and Aisha followed them out. We watched as they walked away, and then we quietly made our way to the door. Let's hurry, I said, pushing the door open. Inside, the air was thick, and the smell was unpleasant. I could see the table cluttered with strange items, and I knew we had to find out what was really going on. Inside the building, Kola and I quickly looked around, searching for anything that could tell us the truth about Aisha's business. I spotted a large freezer in the corner and approached it, my heart racing. I opened the door slowly, and the sight inside made me gasp. The freezer was filled with meat, various cuts wrapped in plastic, but they looked different. I had never seen anything like it before. In a corner, I noticed the label that made my stomach drop. Special order. I turned to Kola, my voice shaky. This can't be from animals. It looks like... I didn't want to say it, but deep down I knew. We were facing another horrifying secret. Kola and I took pictures of everything we saw. We knew we had to show the elders again, but this time the evidence was even more disturbing. Just then we heard footsteps approaching. We need to go now, Kola whispered urgently. We quickly hid behind a stack of crates, holding our breath as Aisha entered the building, talking to the same two figures. Make sure everything is ready for tonight, she said, her tone serious. I can't afford any mistakes like last time. My heart raced at her words. What did she mean by last time? Were there more victims? We knew we had to act quickly. Once they left, we'd gather our evidence and rush to the elders before it was too late. As Aisha and her associates began discussing their plans, Kola and I exchanged glances, knowing we had to hurry. We quietly slipped out of our hiding spot, careful not to make a sound. Once outside, we sprinted back toward the village, adrenaline pumping through our veins. With every step, I felt the weight of what we had uncovered. We had to warn the villagers and stop Aisha before more people were hurt. We reached the elders' meeting place, where they were discussing village matters. We burst in, breathless and scared, ready to share what we had found. Kola and I recounted everything we had seen, showing them the pictures we took from the old building. The elders listened intently, their expressions shifting from curiosity to disbelief to anger. Elder Ojo's face turned grave as he looked at the evidence. This is very serious, he said. We cannot allow this to continue. The elders quickly convened to discuss a plan of action. They realized they had to confront Aisha and her associates immediately. They agreed to gather a group of villagers to go with them, ensuring safety in numbers. Kola and I felt a sense of relief knowing we weren't alone in this fight. That evening, the elders, along with Kola, me, and a group of villagers, marched toward Aisha's shop. The air was tense with anticipation. Everyone had heard about the complaints and the strange happenings, but now we had proof. I could see fear and determination in the eyes of my neighbors, ready to protect our village once more. When we arrived, Aisha was closing up for the night. She looked surprised to see so many people gathered. What's going on? She asked, trying to maintain her composure. Elder Ojo stepped forward, holding up the camera. We know what you've been doing, Aisha. This ends now. The crowd murmured in shock as Elder Ojo explained what we had discovered. He revealed the pictures from the abandoned building and told them about the freezer filled with meat. Aisha's face turned pale, and I could see her panic growing. This isn't what you think, she shouted, but her voice trembled. The villagers weren't convinced. They had trusted her, and now they felt betrayed. The elders insisted on searching her shop and the building behind it. They weren't going to let another evil hide in plain sight. The tension hung in the air as we waited for the truth to be uncovered once more. The elders ordered Aisha to step aside as they entered her shop. I felt a mix of fear and hope as they searched for evidence. Kola stood next to me, and we both held our breath, hoping they would find the same things we had discovered. Aisha paced nervously, her eyes darting around, clearly worried about what might be uncovered. It didn't take long for the elders to find the back entrance to the building where we had seen her meet the shady figures. They went inside, and soon we could hear their voices rising in anger. "There's more than just meat in here," one of the elders shouted. The crowd surged closer, eager to see what was happening. The elders emerged from the building with grim expressions. They carried bags filled with the strange meat and other items that looked even worse. "These are not from animals," Elder Ojo proclaimed, holding up a small, torn piece of clothing that looked like it belonged to a child. Gasps filled the crowd, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The realization hit hard. Aisha had been involved in something terrible, something we had feared from the start. The whispers in the village began to make sense. We hadn't just uncovered a food seller's secret. We had revealed a much darker truth. Aisha was not just selling food. She was part of a gruesome crime. With Aisha exposed, the village felt a mix of fear and anger. People who had once lined up for her food now stood united against her. The elders decided to call the police immediately. This time we wouldn't let fear stop us. We had faced the darkness before, and we would do it again together. As we waited for the authorities to arrive, the villagers shared their stories. How they had felt uneasy about the food, how they had heard the whispers at night. There was a sense of community in the air, a promise that we would protect one another. Kola and I stood with our neighbors, feeling stronger together. The police arrived quickly, responding to the elders' urgent call. They were shocked by what they saw and took immediate action. Aisha tried to protest, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, and the villagers were ready to testify against her. As the police took her away, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. We had fought against darkness twice now, and this time we had succeeded. Aisha's reign of terror was over, and the village could begin to heal. But I also knew that we had to remain vigilant, always ready to protect our home. In the weeks that followed, the village worked to heal from the trauma. The elders held community meetings, encouraging everyone to share their feelings and support one another. Kola and I helped organize events to bring the villagers together, reminding everyone of the strength we found in unity. Aisha's shop was turned into a community center, a place where people could gather and share stories. We painted the walls bright colors and filled the space with laughter. The whispers that once haunted our nights were replaced with the sounds of joy and togetherness. Months later, life in the village had returned to a sense of normalcy. The memories of Mama Ade and Aisha lingered, but they served as reminders of the importance of trust and community. Kola and I had learned valuable lessons about courage and standing up for what is right. One sunny morning, as we gathered with the villagers, I felt a sense of hope for the future. The sun shone brightly, and the air was filled with laughter. We were a stronger community, ready to face anything together. And in that moment, I knew that no darkness could ever take away our light again.